क्षेमतरं भवेत्.
All right, just a couple of quick notes before we get started. I just want to remind everybody about the play that is going on this weekend, right, in the GSW Fine Arts Theater. 17th century French comedy. If you go and you bring back some evidence you were there, right, you get some extra credit. There will also be an extra credit opportunity for you on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Andy Davidson, who is a novelist, is going to be coming to give a reading. I think he's going to be, does it say at Jackson Hall? Yeah, that. Yeah, it's going to be in Jackson Hall at 11 a.m. So if you go and I see you there, then you will get extra participation points. He's going to be talking about vampires, so yay vampires. Not the sparkly kind either. Yes, Kaylin?
Do you know how long it'll last? Roughly?
Probably roughly an hour, maybe less.
Does the show start on Friday?
Thursday. Thursday is the first night of the play. Yeah. Pardon?
Thursday at 8.
Thursday at 8 is the opening night, yeah. I do also just want to just quickly say, please speak up a little bit today. I have a little bit of an ear thing, and so I can't hear very well. And I am sure that you have questions about this. And I want to be able to hear and understand your questions. Okay, so why don't we start there? How did this go for you?
Confusion.
Okay, most of you found it confusing. Okay, what was difficult here? What made it confusing for you?
I didn't know who was talking to who from.
Okay, it was sometimes hard to figure out who was talking to who.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Chris.
The names were awful.
Oh yeah.
Pardon?
The names were awful. So I mean, that's always.
Okay, well, and the thing with names is like if you're dealing with any text in which there are confusing names, right? Best thing to do, like I always do this with Russian novels, where people are called 7 or 8 different things by different people, and everybody's related. I usually just make a chart of who's who and who's related to who, and that usually helps me. But yeah, there are really only 2 characters conversing throughout the excerpt that we have here, right? Right, we have Arjuna, who is a prince, a warrior, and a member of a family called the Pandavas. More on the Pandavas in a minute. The person with whom he is conversing is Krishna, who is his charioteer, his best friend, and is also an avatar that is a physical manifestation of the god Vishnu. So Krishna is a god in physical form. And Arjuna and his brothers are perfectly aware that their friend Krishna is a god. And so yeah, by and large, the form that this poem takes is a long conversation between Arjuna and Krishna as they are about to enter a battle. So that's the basic context here, right? That's what's happening on the literal level. Are there other questions you guys have about this before I proceed? What else did you find troubling or confusing? Yeah, Chris.
How exactly did it end?
I'm sorry, a little louder?
How exactly did it end? Like right at the end, like what did he decide whether or not he was going to war?
Yep, he fights. Arjuna fights. Pardon?
So he ignores everything basically that he said about the war.
Well, if we look at the things that he says about the war and the like, why is he troubled?
He's against it.
Yeah, he's troubled because he has to go to war against his friends, his relatives, his teachers, right? Almost everyone he's ever known and loved is arrayed on the other side of the battle. And he doesn't want to hurt these people. He doesn't want to have to kill them. Right? He doesn't want to fight them. But, and this is where maybe a little bit more background would be helpful. The Bhagavad-gita is a small portion, relatively small portion, it's still very, very long, of an even longer work called the Mahabharata. And these two works belong to a genre that in Sanskrit is called kavya. Probably the closest translation would be our word epic. So it's the ancient Indian equivalent of, say, the Greek and Roman epics. It's not quite the same thing. For one thing, kavyas actually tend to be quite a bit longer and often involve several generations of a family. And that's the case of the Mahabharata. The Mahabharata largely, at least the portion from which the Bhagavad-gita is taken, largely concerns a war between two families, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. Right? Both sets of brothers, they're cousins. First cousins, their fathers are brothers. So there are 5 Pandavas and 100 Kaurava brothers. The Pandavas are the sort of the senior family, right? The older generation, they should actually have a stronger claim to the throne they're fighting over. But there's actually something weird about the 5 Pandava brothers. They are not biological sons of their father. When their father was a young man, he was out hunting, and he heard what sounded like a rabbit rustling around in the bushes, and shot an arrow into it, and it turned out it was a Brahmin, that is a priest, having sex with his wife. Not Pandu's wife, the Brahmin's wife. And as the Brahmin lies dying, he curses Pandu and tells him that should he ever try to have sex with his own wife, he will die. So it turns out that Pandu's wife has this special power where she can invoke certain gods to come to her. And so she invokes 5 different gods to impregnate her. So each of her 5 sons is the son of a different Hindu god. Right? The eldest, Yudhisthira, is the son of Yama, who is the judge of the dead and sort of the Lord of Dharma, right? The keeper of order in the universe. The person who makes sure everybody follows the rules. The second son, Bhima, is the son of Vayu, the god of the wind. The third son, Arjuna, is the son of the thunder god Indra. And the last 2 sons are twins, Nakula and Sahadeva. And they are the sons of a pair of gods called the Ashvins, who are the gods of the sunrise and sunset. So each of these brothers is the son of a different god. Now, because of their father's incapacity, he passes the throne of his kingdom temporarily to his brother Dhritarashtra. And you may have, if you read the introduction, you'll know who Dhritarashtra was. Dhritarashtra is the old blind man who is sitting in his chariot, too feeble to participate in the battle, while his charioteer is describing to him everything that happens, right? So the narrative voice throughout the whole poem is Dhritarashtra's charioteer.
What does that say?
What does what say?
N-A-K-U?
Nakula.
Nakula.
N-A-K-U-L-A.
That's the son. That's one of the sons.
Yep, he's one of the 5 Pandava brothers, yeah. So the Kauravas are basically now running their uncle's kingdom. And when the Pandavas come back and try to claim their birthright, the Kauravas set all sorts of conditions on them. It's like, well, we'll give it back to you if you do this and this and this. The Pandavas do everything they were supposed to do, and in fact, exceed the expectations because they're mythical, magical demigod heroes, right? And that's the kind of shit mythical, magical demigod heroes do. But the Kauravas still won't give up and still won't let go. So once all peaceful options have been exhausted, the Pandavas and the Kauravas are now going to go to war. And that's sort of what the build-up to the beginning moment of the poem is here. Right? These two families about to go to war with each other. So this is where it's come from. Arjuna is fighting to help his brothers reclaim the kingdom that is rightfully theirs. So, if we look at the beginning of the poem, right, as he gets in his chariot and looks out over the opposing side's forces, right? Can I get a volunteer to read from page 1285, Now Monkey Bannered Arjuna? Oh, okay, yeah, Ashley, go for it.
Now Monkey Bannered Arjuna, seeing his foes drawn up for war, raised his bow, that son of Pandu, as their weapons began to clash. Then he said these words to Krishna, Lord of the earth, unshaken one, bring my chariot to a halt between the two adverse armies, so I may see these men arrayed here for the battle they desire, whom I am soon to undertake, a warrior's delight in fighting. I see those who have assembled, the warriors prepared to fight, eager to form in battle for
Dhritarashtra.
I'm not even going to try that, evil son. When Arjuna had spoken so to Krishna, O Bharata, he having brought the chariot to a halt between the armies, in the face of Bhishma, Drona, and the other lords of the earth, said, Behold, O son of Pritha, how these Kurus have assembled. And there the son of Pritha saw rows of grandfathers and grandsons, sons and fathers, uncles, in-laws, teachers, brothers, and companions, all relatives and friends of his in both of the assembled armies. And seeing them arrayed for war, Arjuna, the son of Kunti, felt for them a great compassion as well as great despair, and said,
Okay, you can stop there. So, a couple things to note about what Arjuna sees when he looks out at the army. Right? On the one hand, he sees his friends and relatives, right? There are people he loves on both sides of the conflict. People he doesn't want to harm. But we also know, too, that we see whole generations of both families here. So grandfathers and grandsons, right? So part of what he recognizes is that if this battle commences, right, this is not just going to damage these two sets of brothers, right? These are their lives, not the only ones at stake. So their fathers, their grandfathers, their sons, their grandsons, whole generations could be wiped out here. Can I get somebody to read Arjuna's lament here now? Yeah, Darpan, go for it. Starting with, O Krishna, now that I have seen.
O Krishna, now that I have seen my relatives so keen for a while, I am unstrung, my limbs collapse beneath me, and my mouth is dry. There is a trembling in my body, and my hair rises briskly. Gandheva, my immortal bow, drops from my hand and my skin burns. I can't stand up on my feet. My mind rambles in confusion. All inauspicious are the signs that I see. O handsome-haired one, I foresee no good resulting from slaughtering my kin of war. I have no wish for victory, nor for kingship and its pleasures. O Krishna, what good is kingship? What good even life and pleasure? Those for whose sake we desire kingship, pleasures and enjoyments, are now drawn up in battle lines. Their lives and riches now abundant. Fathers, grandfathers, sons, grandsons, my mother's brothers, and the men who taught me in my youth, brothers and fathers-in-law, kinsmen, all. Though they are prepared to slay us, I do not wish to murder them. Not even to rule the three worlds, how much less one earthly kingdom.
Okay, great. Thank you, Darpan. We can stop there for a minute. Right. So, what is he primarily worried about here at this sort of beginning part of the lament?
Killing his family.
Okay, yeah, family, right? And what's the ultimate goal here that he's talking about? Like, what are they going to fight? What is he concerned?
How keen they are for war. Like, and to him,
Mhm.
like, this is my family. I can't do that. But his family's like, we don't care. We're going to kill you. We're ready to fight.
Yeah, okay. They're not going to hold back on him, right?
Yeah.
They're not going to hold back on him. And he's worried that if you look at what the Pandava's goal is, right, the rulership of one earthly kingdom, right, he's thinking that can't possibly be worth all of the slaughter that it's going to cause, right? It can't possibly be worth it for all of these people to die. It can't possibly be good or moral for all of these people to die for the sake of one earthly kingdom. Can I get somebody else to continue at the top of page 1287 here? You made eye contact.
What joy for us in murdering,
Dhritarashtra.
okay, sons, O Krishna, for if we killed these murderers, evil like theirs would cling to us. So we cannot in justice slay our kinsmen. I don't want to say that.
Dhritarashtra's.
Dhritarashtra's sons, for having killed our people. How could we be pleased, O Madhava? Even if they, mastered by greed, are blind to the consequences of the family's destruction, of friendships lost to treachery. How are we not to comprehend that we must turn back from evil? The wrong done by this destruction is evident, O Shaker of men. For with the family destroyed, its eternal laws must perish, and when they perish, lawlessness overwhelms the whole family. Whelmed by lawlessness, the women of the family are corrupted. From corrupted women comes the intermingling of classes. Such intermingling sends to hell the family and its destroyers. Their ancestors fall then, deprived of rice and water offering. Those who destroy the family, who institute class mingling, cause the laws of the family and laws of caste to be abolished. Men whose familiar laws have been obliterated, O Krishna, are damned to dwell eternally in hell, as we have often heard.
Thanks, Stacia. You can stop there. Does anything in this sound familiar? Does anything in this sound like anything else that we've read?
The, like, separation of genders. Like, if the men are
Okay.
gone, the women will be corrupted and start mingling with different caste systems.
Uh-huh. Okay, does everybody understand what he's talking about here when he discusses the intermingling of classes? Some of you are nodding, some of you are not. Okay. So what he's talking about here is a caste system, a system of sort of social categories called in Sanskrit varnas that are sort of set up in some of the earliest kind of proto-Hindu texts. Right? There's a body of texts called the Vedas, which I'll talk about in a minute, which formed the basis for what is now modern Hinduism. The religion described in the Vedas sort of bears the same relationship to Hinduism that, say, the ancient Israelite religion bears to Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, right? It's the sort of precursor to the modern form of the religion. So there are four major social categories, four major castes. At the top are Brahmins, who are priests and scholars. Below them are the Kshatriyas, who are warriors and earthly rulers. right? Warriors and kings or princes. Arjuna and his brothers belong to this caste. Below them are Vaishyas. The Vaishyas are merchants and skilled workers or craftsmen. And the lowest caste are what are called Shudras, who are sort of general laborers. Now, these castes actually vary a bit from region to region. In some parts of India, there are more castes. In some parts, they're called by different names. And within each of these, there are also various little subcategories. But you are not supposed to, they're sort of defined in terms of ritual purity. Brahmins being the most pure, right? They don't sully their hands with earthly politics. They don't touch dead things. They don't. They concern themselves primarily with matters spiritual. Bless you. And so Kshatriyas rule and conduct war. They conduct politics and war, so the Brahmins don't have to. The Vaishyas dirty their hands with commerce, so the Kshatriyas don't have to. And the Shudras do all sorts of general unskilled labor so that the Vaishyas don't have to, right? Now there is a category outside of the Varnas as well. They used to be called untouchables. They're now typically called Dalit. And this includes anyone who is Hindu but does not have a caste. And it also technically includes anyone who is not Hindu. You're not supposed to, for example, eat food. If you're an observant Hindu, you're not supposed to eat food that is served to you by someone who is not also an observant Hindu. And you're not supposed to marry outside of your caste. That's the thing that he's worried about when he talks about the intermingling of classes. I realize that this is a very lengthy explanation for this, right? But it's similar in some ways sort of to that Greek oikos, Latin domos idea, if maybe a little bit more complicated. Right? The idea that on some level, the building block of society is the family relationship. Now, the family relationships here are categorized within these castes, these broader categories, right? But what he's worried about happening if the family breaks down, right? If the family breaks down, the caste system will break down. And if the caste system breaks down, right, he talks about ancestors being deprived of their rice and water offerings. Right? That means that the ritual observances that all society participates in, those will cease, right? You'll have, mass, large-scale social breakdown. So he's worried that it's not just that he's upset about the idea of going to war against his family. He worries that the very idea of warring against family is going to lead to the destruction of society as they know it. And so how does Krishna respond to this? What do you make of Krishna's response to Arjuna's little dilemma?
That he thought it would have to come to that, all the bad things in order to get one good thing.
Yeah. But from Krishna's perspective, should Arjuna let his family relationship with the Kauravas stop him?
No.
Why not?
Because he believes that he'll mess up with his dharma or what his responsibility is.
Yeah. If whoever you are in Hindu society, right? You have a dharma that is specific to you. I mean, not necessarily specific to you as an individual, but specific, to your caste, to your, your age, your stage of life, that sort of thing, right? So, for example, someone who is a student has a different dharma than someone who is a married householder, who has a different dharma from someone who is, retreating into scholarship in old age, right? There are these sort of 4 stages of life that all people are supposed to go to. Women have different dharma from men, right? Brahmins have different dharma from Vaishyas, and so on and so forth. So all of these things intermingle to determine what your specific dharma is. The closest translation in English is something like law or duty, but again, it doesn't really cleanly translate. And essentially what dharma is the set of sort of expectations placed on you by your age and social position, right? If you are acting in accordance with your dharma, then you accumulate positive karma, right? Your actions take on a positive flavor, and this will show itself in luck that you will have in the future, right? If you are going against your dharma, then you acquire negative karma, and your actions will have an evil flavor to them, right? This is when he's talking about how he, if we kill Dhritarashtra's sons, right, their evil will cling to us, right? The bad karma they've already accumulated will cling to us, will affect us through contact. So, given that Arjuna is a kshatriya, what ought he to do in this situation? What would his dharma be? To fight, right? His cause is just. He's fighting to protect his own family and their claims, and they've exhausted all other peaceful avenues. So, according to the laws of dharma, he is obligated to fight. He doesn't have to like it. In fact, he probably shouldn't. He probably shouldn't take pleasure in it. But he does still have to fight. Can I get somebody to read on page 1288, chapter 2, from The Lord Said? Right, this is sort of what Krishna instructing Arjuna. Anybody who hasn't read it? Yeah, Tess, go for it.
The Lord said, although you seem to speak lightly, you have mourned those not to be mourned. The wise do not grieve for those gone or for those who are not yet gone. There was no time when I was not, nor you, nor these lords around us. And there will never be a time, henceforth, when we shall not exist. The embodied one passes through childhood, youth, and then old age. Then attains another body. In this, the wise are undeceived. Contact with matter by which we heal heat and cold, pleasure and pain are transitory, come and go.
Mm-hmm.
These must manage to endure. Such contacts do not agitate a wise man. O bull among men, to whom pleasure and pain are one, he is fit for immortality. Not being cannot come to be, nor can what is come not to be. The certainty of these things is known by series of the truth. No, it is undestructible, that by which all is pervaded. No one may cause the destruction of the imperishable one. Bodies of the embodied one, eternal, boundless, all-enduring, are said to die. The one cannot. Therefore, take arms, O Brahma. This man believes the one may kill. The man believes it may be killed. Both of them lack understanding. It neither can kill or be killed. It is not born, nor is it ever mortal. And having been, will not pass from existence. Ancient, unborn, eternally existing. It does not die when the body perishes. How can a man who knows the one to be eternal, both unborn and without end, murder or cause another two? Whom does he kill? Someone who has abandoned worn-out garments sets out to clothe himself in brand new raiment. Just so, when it has cast off worn-out bodies, the embodied one will encounter others.
Okay, thank you, Tessa. You can stop there. Okay, so I trust that this was probably one of the parts that you guys found a little bit thorny and difficult. Yeah? Okay. So let's try to make sense of this early. What does Krishna seem to you to be telling Arjuna?
Is he saying that, like, you can't be killed? Like your spirit, but your body can be killed?
Yeah, I mean, that is actually kind of what he's saying, right? It's that, you can kill a body, right?
Yeah, but you can't kill, like, your soul.
Exactly, yeah. Like, the body itself is a temporary shell for a permanent essence, right? For an immortal soul. And when the body that houses that soul is killed, when it dies, that soul is going to be rehoused in another body, right? So you can't actually kill permanently anyone.
So you're just talking about reincarnation, basically? Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what this is about, is that, the idea of the cycle of reincarnation, right? So what he's telling Arjuna is like, look, if you are worried that you are actually murdering or permanently destroying any of the people on the other side of the battle, right? You can't kill their eternal essence, right? You can't actually destroy the soul. Where this is coming from, right? So I talked a little bit earlier about the Vedas. Now the Vedas, right, are a set of mostly sort of prayers to particular gods and ritual descriptions that are written by and large between about 1700 and 500 BCE. Now towards the end of the Vedic period, there start appearing these texts that are called Upanishads. And the Upanishads are modeled rather differently from the Vedas, right? So instead of being these kind of ritual prescriptions, they usually take the form of a philosophical dialogue between a teacher and a student. They're actually similar in some ways. If you've ever, have any of you ever read any of Plato's dialogues? I will take your silence and the lack of hands in the air to mean no. Okay, well, they're structured kind of similarly, right? Where there is, they're a teacher and a student having a conversation, and the teacher corrects the various misconceptions that the student has about the nature of life, the world, and reality, right? And so, one of the things that the Upanishads seem concerned with is demonstrating that the rituals described in the Vedas, the prayers described in the Vedas, simply aren't enough. They don't actually help the individual human soul achieve liberation from a world of pain, right? From a world of suffering, right? This physical world is regarded as a kind of transitory illusion that is sometimes referred to as Maya. And the goal spelled out in the Upanishads is to liberate yourself from the illusion by not being too attached to earthly things. Right? By freeing yourself from concern for earthly things. Like, for example, the bonds of family. The thing that Arjuna is so worried about. So, the Bhagavad-gita is in a lot of ways modeled on the structure of the Upanishads, right? We can see that just in the way it's structured, right? It's Arjuna complaining about something, and then Krishna explaining to him why he should not be complaining about it, right? And telling him, the truth about life, the universe, and everything.
He's also kind of like telling them, like, you need to chill out, okay? It's not that big of a deal.
Well, I don't think it's that it isn't a big deal. I mean, it's not. He's not condoning casual murder here, right?
No.
This is not.
It's like we saw about his dharma. Arjuna's dharma is to fight, to be
Yes.
a warrior. So
Mhm.
Krishna's telling him, look, I know it sucks, but you got to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So chill out and just do what needs to be done.
Mm-hmm. And yet the consequences he's worried about, the destruction of family, are not something he should be concerned about. And I think if we look towards the end of the poem, we can get some sense of why. That is, right? Why he should not worry so much about his individual family. Can I get a volunteer, starting on page 1298, chapter 11, Arjuna said.
Arjuna said, as a result of
Thanks,
your
Corey.
kindness and speaking of the greatest secret recognized as the Supreme Self, I have been left undiluted. I have in detail heard you speak of creatures' origins and ends, and of your internal greatness. O one of lotus petal eyes, this is just as you have spoken about yourself, O Supreme Lord. I desire to behold your lordly form, O Supreme Spirit. If you think it is possible for me to see this, then, O God, O Lord of Yoga, allow me to behold your eternal self. The blessed Lord said, O son of Pertha, look upon my hundredfold, no thousandfold, forms various and celestial forms of diverse shapes and colors. Behold the Adityas and Vesas, the Rudars, the Ashivans, and Mardatas, many unseen previously. Behold these wonders, Arjuna. Here behold all the universe beings moving and motionless, standing as one in my body, and all else that you wish to see. Behold, you are unable to behold me with your mortal eye. I give you one that is divine. Behold my majestic power.
Okay, you can stop there. Actually, no, keep reading. Continue a little bit.
So Sanjaya said, and after saying this, O King Vishnu, the great Lord of Yoga revealed his supreme majestic form to him, the son of Pritha. That form has many eyes and mouths and many wonders visible, with many scared ornaments and many scared weapons raised, clothed in sacred wreaths and garments with many sacred fragrances, and compromising every wonder of the infinite omniscient God. If in the sky 1,000 suns should have risen all together, the brilliance of it would be like the brilliance of the grape-souled one. And then the son of Pandu saw the universe standing as one, divided up in diverse ways, embodied in the gods of gods.
Okay, great. Thank you, Corey. Okay, so I guess a quick question before I continue here. It occurs to me that it's possible not all of you are aware of who or what Vishnu is. Am I correct in that assumption? Who knows who or what Vishnu is? Yeah, go ahead, Ashlyn.
He's the universe. He's everything.
Well, yes and no.
That's what I was taught.
Yeah, Darpan.
Actually, I think he is considered as the creator and destroyer of the earth. Like all these incidents that happen on the earth, it's thought to be controlled by Vishnu. So he's actually called the creator and the destroyer of the earth.
Yeah, and he's part of a sort of triple god formation, right? So he's usually paired with Brahma and Shiva. And yeah, Vishnu sends mortal avatars, like physical manifestations of himself and his power, to the earth from time to time to preserve it from some terrible tragedy, to save it from some terrible tragedy. Like there's an Indian version of the flood myth in which Vishnu, in the form of a giant fish, warns the flood hero to come, whose name escapes me at the moment, to build a giant boat and put a bunch of people and animals in it and wait out the big flood, right? So we see that familiar pattern repeated there as well. Krishna is one of these avatars Vishnu, has been sent down to intervene in a potentially earth-shattering conflict, right? His purpose on earth is to resolve this little dispute between the Pandavas and the Kauravas, and to put the Pandavas in their rightful place, and to thus make sure that things are the way they're supposed to be. So, when Krishna reveals his divine form to Arjuna, what does he show him?
He shows him all the other gods and the universe and everything. He just shows him everything.
Yeah. What's contained within Krishna's mortal body? Everything. The whole universe. All the suns and stars spinning, right? It's as though, like, he's standing in front of Arjuna, and suddenly the night sky opens up inside him, right? And Arjuna is witness to the movements of the entire cosmos. Now, does this mean that Krishna himself is everything?
No.
What Krishna is revealing to Arjuna, right, is the larger system of which he himself is also a small part. Now, the purpose of this, I think anyway, is to give Arjuna some sense of perspective, right? It may seem to you like this disagreement amongst your relatives is the most important thing in the universe. But you and all of them are all just tiny little specks in the vast sea of infinity. Right. Ultimately, even though you're pretty important for a mortal, you're not really all that important. You only matter in the broader context, right, that I reveal to you by, opening up my chest and showing you the whole universe, right? This is the system you need to care about. This is the system you're a part of, right? Your individual family is not as important. And so what is Arjuna's response to this? Can I get somebody to start reading from 1299? From Arjuna said. Anybody can begin. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, Arjuna said, Father of all the world is still and moving. You are what it worships and its teacher. With none your match, how could there be one greater in these worlds, O power without equal? Making obeisance, lying in prostration, I beg your indulgence, praiseworthy ruler. As father to son, as one friend to another, as lover to behold, show your mercy. I am pleased to have seen what never has been seen before, yet my mind quakes in its terror. Show me, O God, your human form. Have mercy, O Lord of gods, abode of all the cosmos. I wish to see you even as I did once, wearing a diadem with mace and discus. Assume that form now wherein you have 4 arms, O thousand arms of every form the master.
Okay, thank you, Siddhartha. How would we sum up Arjuna's response to what Krishna had showed him?
He is scared.
Yeah, okay, that's a little too much. That's a little intense. Thank you for that, very enlightening, but if you could please just shrink yourself down again and be a little bit less terrifying, that'd be great. Because, who really likes being reminded of his own insignificance, right? The blessed Lord said, For you, Arjuna, by my grace and favor, this highest form is brought forth by my power, of splendor made, universal, endless, primal, and never seen before by any other. Not Vedic sacrifice nor recitation, gifts, rituals, strenuous austerities will let this form of mine be seen by any mortal but you, O hero of the Kurus. You should not tremble nor dwell in confusion at seeing such a terrible appearance. With your fears banished and your mind now cheerful, look once again upon my form, Arjuna. The most important stanza in this little passage is the one in the middle. Right? Not Vedic sacrifice nor recitation, gifts, rituals, strenuous austerities will let this form of mine be seen by any mortal but you, O hero of the Kurus. So essentially, the argument that Krishna is making here is that following the old rituals, following the old ways you were so concerned about at the beginning of our conversation, that is not going to reveal the infinite to you, right? That's not going to peel back the veil of illusion. That is not going to liberate you from this world of pain and the cycle of reincarnation, right? The only way you do that, the only way you accomplish this, is by following your particular dharmic path and through devotion to Vishnu in the form of Krishna, right? All the ritual stuff isn't actually going to help you achieve it. So, moksha is the word, it means liberation. Now I want to point to another passage here as well, because it has to do with attitudes developing at this stage in Indian history towards other sort of, there were a couple of competitor religions developing around the end of the Vedic period that offered a very different kind of path towards salvation and enlightenment. So you've probably heard of Buddhism. How many of you have ever heard of Jainism? Okay, 2 of you. So what can either of you tell us about Jainism? About what they believe or how they behave?
I have no idea, but I actually, being close to India,
Uh-huh.
a lot about Jains and all, my friends and stuff and all.
Mm-hmm.
Like Sikhism, Jainism.
Yeah.
They follow. I forgot the name of the guru who is known as the founder, but it's usually like people. They're a bit religious to the thing, like getting up in the morning, doing these stuff,
Mhm.
praying to gods and all. That's how they usually start the day. Without doing that, they even don't do that. So
Right.
people are a bit religious when they go in context of Sikhism and Jainism. They are usually single-minded to the religion. So
Mm-hmm.
that's how.
Yeah.
I don't have much knowledge about this Jainism and Sikhism, but being close to India and all.
Sure.
Actually, I've heard about this.
Yeah. There aren't a lot of Jains, right? It's a fairly small, and I think some of it is because like the level of expectation placed on you if you participate in this particular religion is fairly high. These are both, or at least were in their earliest forms, what you might call sort of renunciate religions, right? The idea, or at least the ideal that they propose, is a kind of rejection of just about all worldly attachments and all worldly things.
Like super pessimistic.
Pardon?
The Jains, aren't they? I think it's Jainism. They're extremely pessimistic, like to the point where they don't want to hurt anything possible living, and
Mm-hmm.
the more extreme versions are paralyzed by fear that they'll hurt anything.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that actually perhaps paradoxically, makes its way over into militant pacifism. I know that a few years ago, there were Jains moving into Muslim neighborhoods in northern India and building temples. And because you could not slaughter animals or eat meat within a certain radius of a Jain temple, they were trying to force all of the Muslim residents to leave. But yeah, they're extreme pacifists, they're extreme vegetarians. Many actually live in sort of monastic settings out in rural areas, and oftentimes don't even wear clothes. Right? Anything that smacks of attachment to this world, right, is a barrier in your path to enlightenment, your path to, getting free of the endless cycle of reincarnation. And so I think like there's a response to this on page 1292. Right. The Blessed Lord said, "As I have previously taught, there are two paths, O blameless one. There is the discipline of knowledge and the discipline of action. Not by not acting in this world does one become free from action, nor does one approach perfection by renunciation only. Not even for a moment does someone exist without acting. Even against one's will, one acts by the nature-born qualities. He who has restrained his senses, but sits and summons back to mind the sense objects, is said to be a self-deluding hypocrite. But he whose mind controls his senses, who undertakes the discipline of action by the action organs, without attachment, is renowned. You must act as bid, for action is better than non-action is. Not even functions of the body could be sustained by non-action." So what is Krishna here saying to those who would argue that you achieve liberation, you achieve salvation, essentially by withdrawing from the world and doing nothing?
You become nothing. You have no choice. You have to act.
Uh-huh.
And by choosing not to act, you're pretty much just choosing not to be a part of the way of things.
Is he saying that you actually can choose not to act?
Yeah.
Because he said
Oh wait,
it's
no, it's
naturally
not possible.
like you always
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Whether you want to or not, you're always acting, right? You're always doing something. You can't still the involuntary responses of your body, right? You can't completely clear your mind of all thought. You simply can't be completely inactive. And if you choose to be completely inactive, if you choose to renounce the world, then you are also renouncing your responsibilities to other people and to that wider system that you are a part of, right? That wider system that he shows Arjuna at the end of our excerpt here, right? Retreating from the world means retreating from other people. It means retreating from all your social relationships. It means retreating from your obligations to act in particular ways, right? Somebody has to perform the sacrifices, and somebody has to pray for everybody. Somebody has to run the political realm. Somebody has to conduct commerce. Somebody has to walk around lifting heavy things, right? And if any one of these people renounces their particular burden, then that is what actually causes society to fray. That is what actually causes society to break down. Not something relatively trivial like going to war against your own family. Particularly when the war is in pursuit of your larger social duty. This world is bound by action, save for action which is sacrifice. Therefore, O son of Kunti, act without attachment to your deeds. When Prajapati brought forth life, he brought forth sacrifice as well, saying, "By this you may produce, may this be your wish-fulfilling cow. Nourish the gods with sacrifice, and they will nourish you as well. By nourishing each other, you will realize the highest good. Nourished by sacrifice, the gods will give you the pleasures you desire. One who enjoys such gifts without repaying them is just a thief. The good, who eat of the remains from sacrifice, rise up faultless. But the wicked, who cook only for their own sakes, eat their own filth. Beings come to exist by food, which emanates from the rain god, who comes to be by sacrifice, which arises out of action. Know that action comes from Brahman, Brahman comes from the eternal, so the all-pervading Brahman is based in sacrifice forever. One who in this world does not turn the wheel, thus setting it in motion, lives uselessly, O son of Pritha, a sensual, malicious life. So to not act, again, is a purely selfish decision that does nothing to sustain the universe, that does nothing to sustain the community. But the man whose only pleasure is and satisfaction is the self, which is his sole contentment too, has no task he must accomplish. That man finds no significance in what has or has not been done. Moreover, he does not depend on any being whatsoever. Therefore, act without attachment in whatever situation, for by the practice of detached action, one attains the highest. Now, what does he seem to mean? He talks a lot about detached action, right? What does he seem to you to mean by this? Detached action, or action without attachment.
Like when you do something like by yourself, not include like everybody.
Is he talking about attachment to other people necessarily when he talks about detached action?
It's like not putting your heart into it, basically, I think.
Being unemotional
Yeah,
in your actions.
just doing it to do it, not for like a, I don't know, like not putting your all into it, just doing it because you're supposed to.
Well, detached action he seems to regard as a good thing, though, right? You're supposed to act without attachment. Why are you supposed to act without attachment?
Because it won't affect what you do, because you'll just do it without even thinking about it. So you'll do it correctly, because you'll have no judgment of like what's right or wrong.
Okay, yeah, part of it is stop you from second guessing yourself. You do it out of discipline and practice, right? You have worked hard to develop your faculties to the point where you know what Dharma dictates you do in any given situation. You don't have to question it. But acting without attachment doesn't necessarily mean acting thoughtlessly. What it does mean is acting without regards for personal gain.
Oh no, like it's like when you give someone something and not expect anything in return.
Yeah, if you give someone something because it's your duty to give them something, right?
Yeah.
You don't necessarily expect them to give you something in return. You fight in a just cause because it's your duty to fight in that just cause, not because you expect to gain a kingdom out of this. Right? This is right. Goes back to Arjuna's worries at the beginning of the poem, right? Is one earthly kingdom worth all this bloodshed? And one of the things Krishna is telling him to do is, well, forget about the kingdom, right? Forget about the goal. Don't think about what it is you're trying to win. Just think about what it is you are supposed to do. Just think about what it is that is moral and ethical for you in this situation. And what's moral and ethical for you, Arjuna, in this situation, is to fight. So how are we doing with this? Do you guys have further questions about this? Is it starting to make a little more sense to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Pardon? Okay. I thought you said no. And yeah, I mean, I get that, this is not easy stuff. Most of us, I'm assuming, have only a passing familiarity with Hindu texts, with Hindu belief, right? And like I'm not an expert in Sanskrit literatures. I'm not an expert in Hinduism or in ancient Indian cultures, right? I know enough to get by, and so if there are any glaring inaccuracies in anything I've told you, look at the sources that I posted on Georgia View, and they will probably help you navigate some of this. But I think like when we read something that sort of conforms to that epic form, we expect action, right? And we don't really get action in this, right? Not much actually happens, right? The one serious action we see is Krishna, tearing himself open and showing him the whole universe to Arjuna. Otherwise, it's just two guys talking. Now, if you look at the Mahabharata, if you go back to that, to the broader context, there is a hell of a lot of action in that. And we will actually be returning not so much, not to the Mahabharata itself, but we'll be looking later in the semester at a play that is based on a story from the Mahabharata. When we look at Kalidasa's play Shakuntala, it's taken from a story from the Mahabharata. So this is material that's going to come back. All right. Anybody have anything? Questions, complaints, concerns?
I'm happy we didn't have a quiz over this. That would have failed.
Well, I mean, I'm not evil. Oh yeah, Sarah.
Our paper coming out, is that coming up soon?
Yes, we'll talk about that next time. Yep. So I would suggest, the assignment is posted in Georgia View. So I would suggest going to the syllabus and assignments folder, reading over the assignment, and if you have any questions, bring them on Wednesday.
What is the quiz for the text over? Is that over all the text? Because last time